We're getting new reaction to the breaking news. President Trump backing off his plan to slap tariffs on Canada and Mexico, at least for now. We're joined by Senator Tim Sheehy, Republican of Montana. Senator, thanks so much for taking the time. The Trump team making very clear this is a victory in their view. The White House says Canada and Mexico bent the knee. I think that's a quote there. I think one of the questions is that in terms of what the countries are putting on the table, not dramatically different from what they outlined prior. We're going to do this again in 30 days. Do you feel like there is a clear victory here for the Trump White House?
Well, I think what Trump's showing is he's going to use any and all means at his disposal to do what's right for the country. And, there's really no surprise here. These are the policies he ran on 8 years ago. It's what he ran on last year and won on in November, which is he wants to secure that border, and the American people voted for that, and he'll use any means he has to do that. We saw with Colombia a week ago. Overnight, Colombian president said we're not going to take migrants back, criminal migrants back, and by the next day he's sending his own Air Force One to get them. So I think we're seeing victory after victory here, and he's going to keep the pressure on.
Back in the first term, you're very correct that the president has run on tariffs and run on utilizing tariffs across kind of several fronts from his first campaign. I traveled to Montana during his first term. Farmers and ranchers there took a hit, and they received federal assistance because of that hit, but the hit was very real. What are they telling you right now about kind of the uncertainty here?
No, you're absolutely right. There's no question that there's concerns across many American small businesses with regard to what tariffs will do. But there's also equally significant concerns about the issues that are coming from the wide open border. The same farmers and ranchers that are very concerned about the potential impacts of tariffs are even more concerned about the fentanyl in their streets, the crime in their communities. And that crime is very real on the northern border too, Phil. It's not just the southern border. Tribal communities across Montana experience fentanyl coming across from Canada into our communities, causing increase in opioid deaths and obviously violent crime as well. So it's a complicated issue, and we need to use every single tool we have. And in this case, tariffs have been a very effective tool to do that.
No argument with what you're saying about the fentanyl crisis or about border crossings, but in terms of kind of the cost benefit from farmers and ranchers, the potential of losing markets, the potential of prices going down, the difficulty that they faced in that first term, they're willing to trade that off in exchange. Is that how you feel about things?
I don't necessarily think it's a one-for-one trade. I mean, those are the same type of economic challenges they felt during the record inflation during the Biden administration. We were pumping trillions of dollars into the economy, causing commodity prices, causing gas prices, causing equipment prices to become unaffordable for farmers and ranchers, whose cost bases became so high they couldn't make a profit from their product either. So no matter what we do, we're in a very complicated economic scenario here. But most importantly, safety in our streets is key, and securing those borders is the number one priority of this administration. This is going to be a key tool to do that.
The president also ran on deregulation, ran on trying to root out government waste. He certainly has an operator in Elon Musk that is attempting to lead the way on that. I think my question is, we kind of watch how he's attempted to operate in these first couple of weeks. If the shoe was on the other foot, if this was a major Democratic donor from Silicon Valley who came in, having been the biggest donor during a Democratic president who won his campaign, and was going through every single agency and changing things towards their kind of ideological bent, how would you feel about that?
Well, I think we've seen that pretty much in the Biden years. We had a tremendous amount of influence from the American left-wing donors. We saw it in the Obama years. I mean, this is how modern day politics is working. The reality is the DOGE effort has been highly approved by Americans. Our own government accountability officer, the own GAO of our own government, has said that our own government, ourselves essentially, is making up to $500 billion a year in faulty payments to the wrong people, in the wrong amount, to the wrong account. They could be fraudulent. They could just be wrong, going into the ether. $500 billion a year. And we don't think that when our own government tells us that, when our own DOD can't pass an audit, it's about time we do some very serious forensic introspection to figure out how we can be better stewards of our taxpayer dollars. That's what's going on here. And the fact that we have the most successful businessman, arguably one of the smartest men in the world, doing it for free, I think it's a pretty good deal for the American people.
Look, the GAO, in terms of a blueprint for what any kind of audit or rooting out of waste effort should entail, certainly is what they've been doing. I think their officials have made that very clear. And the difference is we don't really know what Elon Musk and his team are doing. Should there be transparency in that? Should there be transparency in terms of what systems they're able to get access to, how they're actually operating?
Well, I think we do know. I mean, we're reading about it every day. You and I are talking about it. I think everything that's happening, after only a week in office, we're seeing a tremendous amount of breakneck progress. I mean, Elon Musk is doing, yet again, exactly what President Trump ran on. There are no surprises here. I think the pearl clutching over every single day when a new announcement comes out, people, this is exactly what President Trump ran on. It's exactly what he said he was going to do. And now he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And I think what we're seeing is the actual carrying out of policies that were very clearly stated they were going to happen. The government accountability process, the government efficiency process is now taking place. We're going to make sure that the government agencies that the American taxpayers pay for are operating effectively and for the benefit of our people.
Real quick, I do want to get this in before I let you go. Tulsi Gabbard picked up two very big votes today. Susan Collins, James Lankford both coming out saying they're going to support her. I know you support the nomination as well. How do you feel that nomination is going to go, particularly in the wake of the questions about her refusal to call Edward Snowden a traitor during her hearing?
Well, listen, Phil, I've been in the Senate for about 3 weeks now, so take my prediction for what it's worth. But I think she's a great lady. I was actually stationed in Hawaii as a Navy SEAL when she was elected to Congress first. So she's a combat veteran officer, like my wife, also a Marine combat veteran from Afghanistan. I think very highly of Tulsi. She's an unconventional pick, and she's unconventional for a good reason. She's going to approach things from a different point of view. She's an incredibly smart woman, and she got my support.
Senator Tim Sheehy, appreciate your time, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you.